there's a lot of brands that we support that only do with us influencer boxes and buyer boxes, and we help them set up a system within Shopify or wherever they want to process these orders so that from the beginning, have a way to capture the costs of the program. I think the biggest problem with influencer boxes, marketing efforts, buyer boxes, free out the door, is that people do not capture the programming properly.
Are you ready to hear more? Welcome to the Bulletproof Your CBG Brand podcast, where we discuss tactics and strategies that you need to give your brand the unfair competitive advantage it deserves. Hello, I'm Dan Lohman. Now, let's roll up our sleeves and get started. Caitlin, thank you for coming on today. Can you please tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you're at, and why did you decide to choose launching and running a fulfillment company?
Hello, thank you for having me. Well, I am a farmer's daughter from the central coast of California, the Salinas Valley, and I grew up in the produce industry. So that is where I started my career, was with my family's business and then, within the produce world. And I was always on teams or drove initiatives that had to do with trucking and had to do with replenishment into retail and things like that. So that was a service that our company provided at the time, was replenishment services and whatnot. So that is how I started my career. And then I left my family's business and I helped a friend of mine. I left my family's business when I became a mom and took some time. And then I helped a friend of mine who was launching a fresh frozen dog food company when he was coming to market. And in helping him, really discovered the lack of support that brands have after production. So after manufacturing, it's like the what now happens. And any brand at any size, that's a very important question to answer. And so that is, I of course couldn't, I didn't find us a great partner. I, researched and interviewed and we worked with a number of partners actually with that brand. But really the support and transparency of like, how much inventory do I have? And did this order go out or not? And like really basic things, just was not done, in my opinion, done well, to support this brand. So, I ended up leaving that brand and chose to kind of cut my teeth with a few brands as my initial partners, as I developed the business model. And that was in like 2021. And then in 2022 to 2023, we started this business. So yeah, we support dry, refrigerated, and frozen products now.
Cool.
So.
So on that note, let's back up. Let's talk a little bit about what it is that you're doing, because we need to frame that, because that
Yep.
is what's so critically important to this entire conversation. So what do you do, and why does it matter? If I'm a brand, why would I reach out to you?
Yeah, so after brands are manufactured, some co-manufacturers will support a brand with storage and with orders, so fulfilling orders, shipping orders out. Some co-manufacturers do support those efforts, but most of them do not. So if you're a brand that is, let's say, just getting started, pre-revenue, or if you're a brand that's $100 million, you need the execution of the orders to happen into KeHE, Unify, Target, Walmart, and direct to consumer, and kind of any way that you are selling your product, you need someone that is going to execute that for you. And so that's what we do here at Full Good. So we support brands by way of implementing our technology into the back end of their direct to consumer sales channels. So Shopify, WooCommerce, Faire.com, you name it. And then also by pallet orders. So, heaven forbid, you get into a massive retailer, you do need to have support to fulfill those huge orders as well. So,
And just for clarity, I actually had the privilege of touring your warehouse, which by the way is amazing. We'll talk about
thank
that
you.
later. Yeah, it's really cool. So if I'm a brand, I can ship you the nuts and the bolts and all the pieces, and then you put it
Yep.
together in a nice box, and then you help ship that. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think
Yep.
that's something that people don't think about when they're building a brand is how do I get this into the hands of a consumer? And how do I set this up so that I'm not spending literally billions of hours putting boxes together?
Yeah. So a lot of brands I mean, every brand, what I think is really cool about this industry is like no brand is the same. No brand, no day is the same. The weather affects a lot of what we do too. So every brand, I think like my biggest piece of advice to brands and, what I want them to know coming out of this call is that it's really important to make a decision early on as to where what your approach is. So if you're focusing on direct to consumer, is your approach that you want a really, really custom look, or are you okay with just a standard corrugate and just throw not throw, but place the products in a standard corrugate with a just plastic tape or craft tape and slap a label on? So I think some brands are okay with that because they're price driven and they might have a product that they're not concerned about the exterior of the box. They're not concerned about the unboxing experience. But then other brands, are very focused on that. And so they might be trying to differentiate their category or, challenge someone else in the category. And this could be a leg up for them is the approach that they take either via direct to consumer or via, influencer boxes or buyer boxes, looking a specific way. I will say that like with the pallet orders and kind of the wholesale, the retail stuff that we do, that's all very standard. That's all the same and pretty much anywhere you go. Things are on a pallet. It's how we communicate when orders are done and whatnot. That is our differentiator there. But as it relates to direct to consumer, the white glove approach and the kind of high touch effect that we provide to brands is definitely unique. And it's something that a lot of other fulfillment centers like don't want to touch. And what I mean by that is, do you want a custom box? Okay, great. I have a community of box suppliers. Let me introduce you to them. Go down that path yourself as a brand founder, right? Decide if that's something that you want to do. And then, do you want just corrugate with a custom tape on top? Great. Let me introduce you to those suppliers as well, right? The tape suppliers that supply Amazon are friends of mine, some other vendors. Unboxing the box, right? Do you want a card on top of your product? Do you want your product to be surrounded with crinkle paper so it doesn't move? What are the details involved in actually getting your order out the door? So during onboarding, we handle a lot of those kind of questions and answers over the course of a call or two. We love to receive the product and then send out examples if we have time. Sometimes we don't have time because we're either taking on work from another fulfillment center or a launch date that's very important and it coincides with when we're going to be receiving product. But in that case, it's like my client services team does a great job of here, let me get on like a FaceTime call with you, or so that you feel as a founder that we are truly an extension of your brand and we are really helping you through this. And then once the bricks are laid and once everything's established for who you are as a brand through fulfillment and operations, we just execute.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing that. So let's unwrap this even more. And the reason that I wanted to go down this path, and
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that, is that a lot of the brands that I mentor and work with, they're struggling trying to figure out, okay, how do I get this package? Not only how do I get this package to someone, but what are the limitations? What can I think of?
Yep.
What I think, excuse me, what do I look at? What are the things I need to put together? And my point is this. A lot of companies, if you go to Expo West and stuff like that, a lot of companies, a lot of brands, they look at someone who provides a label and someone who provides a bag and stuff like that. And those are sort of the nuts and bolts of how they package the
Yep.
product, get it out. What you're saying is that you might be able to offer something creative, something unique something that's cost effective that I hadn't even considered yet. Because again, I'm just trying to figure this out on my own. Can you talk
Yeah, and
more about
there,
that?
yeah, sure. I mean, again, yeah, I think it is so overwhelming for especially new brands, like you said, that may go to Expo or may go somewhere else where they're meeting a ton of vendors to even know, like, how do I put this puzzle together? So what we try to do is simplify, break it down. We ask the questions that are like, what are your goals as a brand? Is it that you're very price driven? Great, like that approach is going to be different. Is it that you are an appearance driven, is there an incentive there for a really high touch look? Great. We will, let's hold your hands there. Um, I will say, like, if you're a regular direct to consumer brand, and you're only focused on your sales channel being direct to consumer, and you're an emerging brand that's coming here, I think there's little things that you can do that have become kind of industry standard, because of Amazon. So that is, to talk about do you need a custom tape that just goes on your corrugate and it's 5 cents or less, per box? Great. Let's introduce you to those suppliers. But we just try to like offer you what is industry standard. And then we tell you, okay, great. This is how it meets, your COGS. So these are all of the inputs that my team is adding to your product to try to meet you where you need to be. So what I mentioned earlier was like, you still have to decide as a founder, who am I? And so that's really, really important. And if you don't know that answer, that's okay. Like we can through that with you by way of kind of the questions that we ask during onboarding. But it's important to kind of consider that. Um, so I hope that kind of answers that a little bit
No, it
better.
does. I appreciate it. So I
Yeah.
don't know what I don't know as a founder.
Okay.
So could I reach out to you, or could we tell people, hey, reach out to you to
Yeah,
kind of get a feel
absolutely.
for what's out there, what's possible?
Yeah, and I do all the time. We do like audits for people. So, I'm starting a brand. It's a ice cream company and it has collagen in it. And, this is a new product to the market and I am trying to shake up, whatever. Okay, great. What are your goals? Are your goals to focus on direct to consumer or are your goals to focus on wholesale? So that's the first question, right? Second question, if you're focusing on direct to consumer, it is let's go down the path of making sure that your ice cream arrives perfectly frozen. Okay, so that's going to be what box we use, what insulation we use, how much dry ice is added. Our team helps you figure that out. We give you examples or we literally send you sample boxes of what we think you should do if you do not have that already. If you come to us with any level of a goal, we will meet those goals. But a lot of these emerging brands that we help just don't even know what they don't know, like you said. So, and then if, hey, your goal is only wholesale retail, awesome. Do you need us to still support you with buyer boxes so that when you're getting into Kroger, Albertsons, Safeway, we can still send those boxes, for you to the buyers? That's interesting to think about too. So either path, you still have to have some level of support by way of small box. So that will always be a discussion point. Um, but again, there's so many variables involved because that's what I love this business. Every brand is different.
Perfect. I love that. So one of the things that we talked about when I was there, kind of a little bit of a segue, but it makes sense. I mean, this is relevant, is you talked about how a lot of times you get in product packaging that maybe there's misspellings and things that aren't perfect on the packaging. So my point is,
Yep.
uh, with your expertise, you could help me as a new brand
Yep.
make sure that everything is right so that it looks right. And where I'm going here, Caitlin, is from an experiential marketing point of view, your packaging needs to say a lot about your product. And so being able to present that to the consumer with your expertise, you can help guide me, as I understand it, to help make sure that I've got the right look, the right feel, the right communication on my box, the way it's wrapped, etc. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, there's been a few cases where we've helped brands that are pre-revenue or very newly established. Um, that have come to us with kind of everything already sorted, and that's great. But every once in a while, it's interesting to consider what about another set of eyes? And so there has been a few times that we've received packaging or exterior boxes that, the spelling might be perfect and all of that stuff, but the units of measure are off, or the way that they present the barcode is really interesting and should have been placed differently, or kind of things that matter to ops, to operations, so to my group and to retailers, wholesalers, is, not there. So I always encourage brands. I'm like, it's never too early. Please bring my team in to like any discussion that you want. We offer it as a line item on our scopes of work. Like you could either pay us for your time, or I give a lot of free time away too to our brand partners. We want things to be perfect because our goal is for you to fly off the shelf, because at the end of the day, that's what I make money on, right? But also you make money too. So it's a win-win partnership wise. There's just so many little mistakes that I've seen and that you and I, when we were here, we had a great discussion about that. It's just, there's two approaches. It's how many cooks are in the kitchen. That's too many cooks in the kitchen. But then the other approach is, well, what about a different perspective? And so while you may have had five people look at your label or your packaging or your approach, have you thought of who in that circle, is offering that guidance? Is anyone from the operational side? And if they're not, maybe consider asking someone in your network or me. I'm happy to provide guidance to people that I don't work with all the time because I want to see good things on the shelf, um, to give some guidance. So yeah, that's been really interesting. It's also something that I also talk all the time with brands about is, why are you a 50 count versus a 10 count? Or why are you, just kind of asking the questions that, and I'm not afraid to ask those questions. And I think sometimes it comes off like harsh, but I want just what is good for everyone. So, and while I'm not a, product creator, I am seeing a lot of products, hundreds of brands every single solitary day. I'm seeing what's working. I'm seeing what's not working. So, and for the brands that I help that are not working, they want to work. So we're righting those ships quickly. Um, yeah,
So that's invaluable. And on that
it is.
note, a lot of products, when they get to retail, there's a lot of friction because of the stuff you're talking about. And
Yep.
so the goal here is to make everything frictionless so that the retailer can onboard it, get it in the shelf, and start selling it. That's critically important. So thank you for that. One of the things that you mentioned is the count in the boxes. This is something I don't think a lot of brands think about. You've got slotting in almost every retailer.
Yep.
Unfortunately, I think slotting is it's anyhow. I could go down that path. You get distracted there, but the point is, a lot of brands charge slotting in terms of free fill, a box or two boxes or something like that. So if you have 20 or 30 items in a box and that won't fit on the shelf, then they have to have back stock. Anyhow, a lot of things to consider. Sometimes you don't have enough in the box, so you got to bring in two boxes. So you can help brands with that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think I know enough to be dangerous about like all the categories in the grocery store at this point. I obviously grew up in the produce world, so I really know that category very, very well. But as it relates to dry, refrigerated, frozen products, I think what's interesting is that a lot of brands, and I'm gonna like answer your question, but I will say one thing. A lot of brands focus so heavily on getting into a retailer, and I know that you're in the same camp as me. I would heavily focus on finding the right retail partner first, identifying who that's going to be with your brand very early on. That should be part of your ICP, ideal client profile. If you do not know that answer, don't go into business yet. You need to know exactly who you're selling to, and that involves the retailer. Secondly, it's once you're on the shelf, it's velocity and getting off the shelf. So how are you positioning yourself to do that? If you have a box that is as long as the shelf And, you and I both know when you're grocery shopping and there's something in the very, very, very back and it's dark back there, as a consumer, I'm not even going to be able to see what's back there. So I don't know. It's just really basic things that people are forgetting about right now. Founders are forgetting about right now. I think a 6 count is better than an 18 count all day long, right? Your discussion earlier about the slotting fees and all of these various fees and all these things, that to me goes back to who your ICP is. What is your goal as a brand? Who are your ideal clients? And are you positioned properly? And if you are, then you're going to have to deal with some of those slotting fees and some of those chargebacks and some of the things. The beauty of AI, the beauty of kind of all the things that are a lot of this like darkness in retail is being uncovered like quickly. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of software out there and a lot of technology out there that is really brand forward. And I'm really excited to see how brands are going to come ahead. I hope
That
pretty
makes
soon
sense.
here. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really cool groups out there. I had a call, and I'll pump them on this podcast. I had a call with a group called Retail Ready. And their whole premise is that they support EDI. So whenever for people that are listening that don't know, whenever you receive an order from a retailer, a lot of times it's either via PDF, so just like an email, or, and this is part of your contract, you either receive orders via email or you receive orders via EDI. And that's yet another layer to the COG. So you must have an EDI partner that can translate those electronic documents for you. Retail Ready is one of those groups that they're up and coming. They're awesome. They're female founded. So of course I love them so much.
Mhm.
They're out of the Bay Area. What they're doing that's interesting that a lot of other like EDI partners aren't doing is like they are translating and I'm not going to say it as good as they can, but they are translating how to avoid chargebacks, how to avoid certain things. So whether it be the product sticker placement on a pallet, are all the clicks correct when you're accepting an EDI order? These are all steps that brands have to know how to do. Their software, it breaks it down so that any retailer that you go into, they like bulletproof it so that you essentially by an act of God do not receive chargebacks. It's cool. So those are the kinds of pieces of technology that are out there that I'm like really amazed with and that I meet with as, an operational partner to brands. I want my brands to get as much money from retailers as possible, right? I want them to succeed because at the end of the day, it keeps me in business too. So we have to break the cycle um, and give as much back to the consumer as possible by way of, cheaper food, cheaper, great food, by the way, like great, sustainable, awesome, natural products. So that's
Love
what I'm
that.
really passionate about. Yeah.
Love that. I appreciate it. Well, and if people knew how much wasted spend is
Yes.
in just getting this stuff onto the shelf, they would
Mhm.
be dumbfounded. And we
Yeah,
could probably,
there's a partner, not to interrupt you, but there is a partner that I'm helping right now that is going through this. A brand partner of mine that is going through something with a big retailer by the name of Walmart. Um, that, on the back of their product, they have a QR code and they're having to place a sticker over that QR code because something on the QR code Walmart's not happy with. That would have been so lovely for this brand to have known prior to, the placement of all of these QR codes on their existing packaging. So just little things like that it's like these big retailers have so much control over these brands. People don't realize. Yeah, I mean, and so now my team is having to go back and touch that product yet one more time to make sure that they don't receive chargebacks from Walmart. And it's like I've got to pay my bills, so I've got to then charge the brand, right? So then on the shelf, how much money is either going back to, and in this case, it's a farmer-owned brand, which is a really cool brand. So how much money is, and that's a whole nother discussion, but going then back to the farm, literally,
Mhm.
and so it's just interesting. I mean, we could talk about it all day. it's really interesting. Um,
Well, thank you for sharing that. One of the things that I talk a lot about is business leaking, leaks in terms of your business. And the point being is that those leaks, what you're talking about, are so critically
mhm.
important to shore up. So most deductions are 100% preventable.
Yeah.
And that's what you're talking about. And so even if a brand were to pay someone to manage the deductions for them, that's an expense, one. And then two, that's cash flow you don't have control of. So with that
Yeah.
in mind, that's why this matters so much. So having the right amount of stuff in the box so that you're not putting too many, enough boxes to fill the shelf so that you can reorder it and make sure you've got more coming in without putting back stock in the stores. There's so many things to consider. So thank you for bringing all that up. One of the
Yeah, I
things that,
think the other,
go
like
ahead.
really quickly, Dan, I think the other important thing to note is that your buyers don't have the control that you think that they have. So if that you have an order that comes across from a buyer and it's absurd and you have the data, you have the wherewithal to know that that order is absurd, please push back as a brand because they're trying to play a game with you, right? And I don't want this podcast to like evolve into like the retailers are the devil, but I just think that brands need to be equipped to know that conversations must happen at every single step of the process. And that if something funky comes across from a major retailer or a broker or whatever, ask the questions. Just ask the question back. I think that's something that is also critically important for brands to know.
Thank you for sharing that. And let's put
Yeah.
distributors in that bucket too, because I think they're some of the biggest violators of
Yes.
these problems. And they create, in my opinion, a lot more of the issues that we see at retail. And so,
I
yeah, that's
agree.
something brands need to control is be aware of all this. So thank you for sharing that. So
Yeah, got it.
let's say that I start. Well, let's talk a little bit about your warehouse. It is unbelievably clean. I was so thoroughly impressed. It
Oh,
looked
thank
like,
you.
well, I mean, my hat's off to you. Honestly, it looked like you had just built it, hadn't done anything, no dirt, no
Oh,
dust, it had a chance to land or anything. I was so impressed at how clean it was. I was shocked because, I mean, you could tell someone spent a lot of time on it. Let's talk about why that matters. From my perspective, that shows a lot of care, a lot of quality, and it shows that you're putting my products, my consumers first. What else? Why do you do that? Why do you make such a point to make sure that your facility looks so great?
yeah, so I think it's not just about the look, right? It's about because I've been in warehouses that apparently look great, right? Like what you're saying. Um, so what's really important for me, especially coming from the produce world, is food safety. And this is something that not a lot of warehouses have to worry about because in our country, there are not a ton of regulations right now relative to food safety as it relates to dry products in particular. So there's a lot of warehouses out there and a lot of the reason why I started this business, there's a lot of warehouses out there that will sell a Barbie doll next to the peanut butter jar. And so while that sounds okay, because they're both like within their own little package and they should be okay. They do not have the same standards relative to lot codes, expiration dates, FIFO that we have because they don't have to. They primarily are working with Barbies or whatever. So we solely focus on food and beverage. Um, as it relates to my past life and many members of my leadership team I've hired from co-manufacturing actually. And the reason why, like the approach there is that they know how to make these products. So they've worked for manufacturing facilities. The level of standards in manufacturing is extremely high as well. So, as it relates to warehouse, if we can translate some of that over to the facility that stores and processes the orders, that is our goal. Now, we are going for GMP certification. They take 6 months of data to approve you. You know, that's great. There's other certification companies out there. There's not a ton that really relate to warehousing and food movement solely. There's a lot of, like, for example, with our GMP certification, like we've had to be very clear on the fact that we are not a manufacturer. So GMP stands for good manufacturing practices. Now, we are only the warehousing component of that. So really, like our certification, I mean, we could pass our certification tomorrow. It's just they're waiting on the data. Now, the data shows how frequently are we cleaning our warehouse. So we clean it once a day very, very thoroughly, and then at the end of our morning shift as well. So we have records of all of that. And then we have zones. So, and they're all color coded because we like colors and whatnot. But so we have everything very broken down in our warehouse that is specific to the workspaces. So as you walk down our facility, it's, every packing station translates to 10 plus clients. I mean, there's a packing station on almost every row of our warehouse because we don't want our people walking super far and things like that as they're working. And then with our refrigerator and our freezer, I mean, we designed a unit that is super efficient. So you quite literally can drive your forklift into the refrigerator. The door opens with a laser eye, closes right behind you, and then you keep driving and you go into the freezer. So it's from a temperature and from an efficiency standpoint, you're not walking straight from ambient to frozen. So that's very, very important too. As it relates to direct to consumer, when we're preparing frozen orders, we have certain time restrictions that our team can have things out at ambient, and same with refrigerated for that matter. When we're dealing with ice cream, sorbet, things like that, it's a totally different ball game to keep things frozen or to keep things at temperature like we need them to. So, kind of rambling a little bit, but I appreciate your honesty and saying that, it's such a clean environment. We really take a lot of pride in it. And the people that I have here in leadership are like some of the like top notch, and it is like one of our values is doing what we say we're going to do. And that translates to the cleanliness and whatnot of our facility. So,
Thank you for sharing that. And the reason I wanted to highlight that, and again, this goes back to where we started kind of, it's that attention to detail. So I'm
yeah.
a founder, I'm a brand, I put my life, blood, sweat, and tears, whatever, into my product. I want consumers to be happy with it. I want the entire process between leaving my mind or whatever, wherever I build
Yep.
it, to the retailer to be frictionless so that everything goes through, sells easy, etc. I create as few problems as possible. But my point is the fact that you are such an integral part of that and you can help me with, how do I do this? Again, the attention to detail, because my brand is a representation of me. Someone once made the comment to me that when you're selling something, think of it as you're handing them a blank check and you're asking them to put an amount on it. What would they pay you for it? And so that's kind of reflective of how I present myself. So thank you for sharing that. I know
Oh,
that
of
we're
course.
coming up on time. What else would you like to share? Because first of all, let me back up. I think what you provide is amazing. I think it's
Oh, thank
really
you.
critically important. Well, I really mean that. It's so important. It's so desperately needed in this industry. What
Yeah.
else would you like to share? What things have we not talked about yet?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I have really big goals for this business. And so does my team. I'm very passionate about a mission and driven focused food environment. And what I mean by that is, you know, I love great products that are translating to better health for Americans and for, I do a lot of international shipping too. Um, and I think at the end of the day, I think our food system, everyone talks about how our food system is broken. I actually don't think it's broken. I think that it's healing, and that there are a lot of founders out there that are doing a great job as to trying to contribute to that healing effort. And especially, being a farmer's daughter, we grew our mother's nature's best medicine, which is fresh produce. And so I think as fresh as we can all eat every single day is obviously very, very important for our bodies. But I think as that translates to the products that I work with now, which is, dry, refrigerated, and frozen products, I think as best ingredients as possible is best for our bodies too. So I've got big goals for this business to not only help those people in our community, in our country that are really driving those efforts to truly support them. So that hopefully will mean a national approach with Full Good. So, Denver's our first stop. And I would love to see this thing go really big time. And we're already making a huge impact because we're providing those natural products, I'm going to call them, with some great support. So, and a lot of times, I mean, we will take on brands that have been with other fulfillment centers and it's not, we try to not shed negative lights, but we will provide them with the data that they need during that transition. So yes, your fulfillment center told you that you had X amount of products. When we actually received Y. Or yes, we did receive that amount of products, but your pallet had so much soot and dirt on the top of it that we are concerned about the first two layers. So things like that is kind of the level attention of detail that we do, like you said earlier, that we go into for brands. We really do try to partner with brands. I think the last thing I will say is part of shaking up this industry by way of great natural products that are good for you involves great communication and it involves great partnerships. And so I always encourage founders, and we go through this during onboarding. How would you like to be communicated to? How frequently would you like to be communicated to? And, can you tell me when we're not doing something great? Can you tell me right away so that nothing is left on the shelf? Because if you can't have that great communication, then that just lends itself to toxicity later on. So, yeah, I mean, we've got founders that are like, I don't want to hear from you. I don't want to speak to you guys. I'm far too busy trying to sell and market this thing. Please give me a end of week download. We've got founders that are like, anytime there's something, please flag me with a text message. So we develop that kind of communication cadence too. I think it's just important, no matter what partner that you have as a natural brand founder, that you find these partners that work for you, by way of knowing who you are and how you want to take your brand all the way through to succession. So.
Perfect. I appreciate you saying, well, and when I say broken food system, to your point, I agree. The food's getting better. However, it's all the touch points and all the things that are
Exactly.
broken between the founder and the retailer. So thank you for sharing that and some great antidotes too.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you coming on. Thanks for making time for me.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
With all the uncertainty in our economy at the moment, many brands are focused on survival, margin erosion, growth, and getting an equal seat at the table. But here's the reality check. Big brands are not going to give up shelf space because your product is better. Private label is not going to step aside because your mission is stronger. And retailers are not going to do the work for you. Traditional category management often optimizes what's already existing instead of identifying what the current shelf is missing. That blind spot drains runway through weak promotions, poor execution, missed distribution, poor assumptions, and retailer stories that land to fail. Start with the 15-minute CBG Runway Leak Finder. It helps you see where your brand is quietly losing cash, margin, execution, and decision quality before bigger competition exploits those gaps. It can help you see what others miss, make better decisions, protect margin, and compete above your weight. Get it instantly. No friction, no email required. Go to retailsolve.com/guide30. You need a sharper way to show the retailer why your brand grows the category, serves the shopper, protects margin, and deserves space. Thanks again for joining us today. Please reach out and share your most pressing questions, and I'll do my best to get you the answers that you need on future episodes, including with expert advice from CEOs and industry thought leaders. Comment, leave your questions, and get this week's free downloadable guide and the show notes at retailsolve.com/session321.